Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Asheville. I'm Clyde Harden, President of the Governing Board, the Board of Trustees. We are glad you are here, both congregant and visitor. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, you are welcome in our faith community. If you're visiting us here in the sanctuary, welcome. If you're visiting us online and want to learn more about us, please click the link in the chat box. And while you're in that chat, we invite you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're watching from. We are glad you are here. I'm not only glad that you're all here, I'm glad that I'm here in the midst of all these smiling faces. In fact, I'm more than glad to be here. I'm downright excited. Spring weather and blossoms have finally arrived, and both congregants and visitors are populating our sanctuary after a 2-year winter of COVID isolation. This pandemic has really done a number on us, disconnecting us and diminishing what for most of us is a really important part of our lives. But UU Asheville is still very much alive, thanks to our stalwart staff and valiant volunteers working behind the scenes, and of course sometimes in the scenes displayed on your chosen viewing device. I can't thank them enough. Along with the thrill of being able to be back in community in 3D, we have some exciting times coming to UU Asheville. As you know, we are in search for a new minister. The first really big step of that search is the forming of a ministerial search committee, a committee of 7 respected members of this church who will help us discover what we want the future of Asheville to be and what kind of minister will help us get there. Using that information, the search committee will then do all the hard work of interviewing potential ministers and will ultimately bring us a candidate. So this is a hugely important job. And you, as members, are driving the selection of the search committee. People from the board, the Leadership Development Committee, and the transition team are now calling every member to get suggestions for who might represent our congregation well. If you haven't gotten a call from someone about this, you should within the next 2 weeks. And if you don't get a call by then, please let me or any member of the board, the transition team, or the Leadership Development Committee know about that. We want to hear from you. Yes, it's good to be here at UU Asheville in the spring. I see leaves coming back, I see people coming back, and I see the choir back. And speaking of the choir, let us prepare for worship with today's centering music. Thank you.
We are very happy and excited to have our choir back singing for us.
Sing we a joyful song. This is a rare week in the history of the world. Every 33 years, Christian holiday, Good Friday, Ramadan, and Passover intersect. And this is that year. But this morning we are going to honor and acknowledge the Christian holiday of Easter, the holy day. The call to worship I've chosen this morning, and I'm Reverend Kathy Harrington, sorry, forgot to introduce myself, and I'm the interim minister of this congregation. Call to worship is by Elizabeth Strong. Out of the earth rises light, rises life, rises spring. May we join with the miracle that is springtime and enter into life with lightness and joy. Out of the Spirit rises faith, rises hope, rises love. May we join with the miracle that is Easter time and enter into life with hope and love. Let us resurrect with spring. Let us resurrect with the Spirit and enter into a renewed life as we gather in our time of worship together this Easter morning. It's good to be together again. So now let us rise in body or spirit and begin together in song. Please lift your voices with me and sing hymn number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. Time for all ages this morning is going to be done during the homilies, so we don't have one, so we're going straight to the centering moment. In the center of our service and in the center of our lives, let us pause to honor the silences of the world. Let us open our hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. This is a prayer written by Unknown. Will I recognize you, O Lord, in broken bread, in realities harsh, and dreams that only remain dreams? At those moments when terror fills my heart, touch the scars of lost hope. Then shattered spirits will be healed. For I too hold bread to break the grace of the day. Help me to walk with strangers, to allow them to unfold the good news of life, to cradle another's pain in my heart, to feed the hunger of unmet needs. I walk to Emmaus again and again, trusting that you will join me on the journey. With you as companion and guide, I too will become a giver of grace. Amen. And now it is time for acknowledging our joys and sorrows with a candle lighting ritual. Those of you in the sanctuary are invited to come forward and light a candle of hope or memory. And if you're online, please share in the chat box any joy or sorrow that you would like to share with the congregation. We light one last candle for all those joys or sorrows that we hold in our hearts.
When the Spirit says sing, I'm gonna sing when says sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says sing. Sing for the joy our voices bring. I'm gonna sing, sing, sing when the Spirit says sing.
So, if the Spirit says stand and you're a visitor, would you like to stand and introduce yourself this morning? Okay, we have this stand. Oh, thank you.
Hi, we're Arthur and Ellie Levin. We have a place downtown, part-time, and live in Beaufort, South Carolina.
Oh, welcome, welcome. Love Beaufort. Welcome.
Hello from Ellie. Can you hear him?
All right, test.
Yes.
My name is Allie Stetsick, and I just moved into Fairview over the weekend.
Oh, welcome.
So I'm coming from UU Charlotte.
Oh.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Harferris. I just moved to Weaverville from Oklahoma City by way of the East Bay, California. I also am a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ames, and I have the distinct honor of being the first and only member to have never set foot inside the church. I'm a COVID UU baby, so that's how I became a member there. And so I also am in training to become a UU minister. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, I am Tate Morgan, and I am in town just visiting for Easter. I am from Knoxville, and I go to Oak Ridge UU.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Marianne Miller-Masana, and I'm here visiting from Mainline Unitarian Church up near Philadelphia. And I'm here visiting my friend Neil.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm David Jones, and this is my wife,
Jenny.
And we're new to the area about a year and a half ago, and have been wanting to come in person to the church for a long time, and this was the first weekend we got to do that. So.
We're glad you're here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, yeah. Very excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Bryn McKay. I moved here about 6 months ago, coming from UU Fellowship in Raleigh. I got a place right down the road and been here a few times, so thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, visitors, for...
Oh, I had one more.
Oh.
Cricket, can you stand, please? I wanted to introduce one of my best friends, Cricket Wren. She is the owner and stylist of Looking Glass Salon right across the street, and this doesn't happen naturally. So. But as my husband says, there's a good palette to work with. So
she has curly hair.
Everybody welcome Cricket and say hello after the service.
Welcome. All right. So now you get to stand up and greet your neighbor. We'll give you just a few minutes. Those of you, just turn behind and say hello to your neighbor. All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to sit when the Spirit says sit, when the minister says sit. Yes, you're so rowdy. Joyful noise is so good this morning. Thank you. Okay, dear ones, that was really fun. We have to do that more often. Okay, so here we are. We are going to honor Easter with a story called The Tree That Survived the Winter. It was a story I came across 20 years ago and hadn't thought of it in a very long time. So after the long pandemic winter, we are regathering and reawakening and rejoicing in sort of a rebirth. So we'll celebrate our joy, but we're also going to take time to honor the pain and the losses of the past 2 years, 2.5 or almost, it seems. And then also we're going to celebrate at the end our possibility as we move into the future. I have bubbles that I was going to give to the people sitting in the front row, but basically nobody, I forgot, wants to sit in the front row in a church. What was I thinking? I would have given them, I'm going to give you all bubbles before you leave, but Linda, our administrator, would not let me let you blow bubbles on the carpet. So She wins again. So as we share the story of the tree that survived the winter by Mary Fahey, we will reflect on the meaning of the Easter story and how it isn't a supernatural story about a man who rose from the dead, but a story that parallels many other ancient myths. It has, at its core, one scholar says, the very core, it comes from an ancient myth from Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, or the land that we call Iraq today. The story of the death and resurrection is just one such story. In the Sumerian tradition in which the Bible is rooted, the story is called From the Great Above to the Great Below, or the Descent of Inanna. There's also a Babylonian version of the myth, which is called the Descent of Ishtar, and she is known elsewhere as Astarte. The Hebrew scholar Walter Brueggemann explains that Easter is not a spiritual event, but a surging of power that touches all of life. The Easter question is not whether or not you can get your mind around the resurrection, because you cannot, but rather it's whether you can permit in your horizon new healing power, new surging possibility, new ways of power in an armed and fearful world. New risk, new life, leaping, dancing, and singing and praising the powers beyond all our controlled powers. So as one colleague put it, Easter is a time now, today, for rolling away the stone of the pandemic. So let us now begin with part one of The Tree That Survived the Winter. This is Deborah Freeman, our worship associate.
Good morning. Awakening to joy. The tree awakens after the long winter and exclaims, "I have survived the winter. How different this feels," mused the tree. For a few short weeks ago, the melting earth beneath her roots had sent shivers of panic through every branch. She had cried out in alarm then, sensing that she might sink into that dark hole and lose herself. How silly it all seems now, she realized, but the feelings had been real and could not be denied. It was not unlike the despair she had experienced earlier when she had been removed from her safe and comfortable nursery bed and transplanted to this lonely hillside. She vividly recalled how frightened she had been, so isolated from all that was familiar and precious to her, so trapped in her fear, so unsure of who she was and what was to become of her. Often during the cold winter, she had questioned the reason, but even while she had trembled with anxiety, she had felt an inner voice, a small but steady voice, which remained fluid and alive even when everything else in her had seemed paralyzed. But now, she was filled with the realization that her inner life was in harmony with the world outside. She relaxed the tight fibers of her being, which she had unwittingly held rigid during the cold gray months. The breezes reassured her that she had grown over the long cold winter, and the sun told the tree that she had survived because she was loved very much, and she basked in the warmth of the sun. It was good to be alive, she exclaimed, feeling lovely and loved. The little tree was grateful.
So Easter Sunday marks the final day of Holy Week, the most sacred of all weeks in Christianity. Easter gets its name from the Teutonic goddess of spring and the dawn, whose name is spelled Oestre or Estre. The origin of the word east, the direction of the rising sun, comes from the famous Germanic Austro-Hungarian word for dawn that shared the root for the word aurora, which means to shine. Modern pagans have generally accepted the spelling Ostara, O-S-T-A-R-A, Ostara, which honors the goddess as the word for the vernal equinox. And the vernal equinox usually falls somewhere between March 19th and March 22nd. Many resources mention only March 21st as opposed to the date of the actual equinox. Excuse me. Depending on when the first full moon on or after the equinox occurred. Did you see the full moon last night? Wow, wasn't it gorgeous? I think someone said it was a pink full moon. So the equinox is recognized all around the world for renewal, rebirth, and excuse me, revivification. It was a celebration of the symbolic resurrection of the earth itself. The earth reawakens to a burgeoning new season of life-giving, life-affirming gifts. As the sun becomes stronger, there is a sense of joyful abundance. In the words of Archibald MacLeish, why, it was wonderful. Why, all at once there were leaves at the end of a dry stick, small, alive, leaves out of wood. It was wonderful. You can't imagine. They came by the wood path, and the earth loosened. The earth relaxed, and there were flowers out of the earth. Think of it. And oak trees oozing new green at the tips of them, and flowers squeezed out of the clay. Soft flowers, limp stalks, flowering. Well, it was like a dream. It happened so quickly. All of a sudden, it happened. So we would do a little ritual this morning with the pieces of paper that you were given as you came in. What is your joy this morning? The little tree is grateful. What are you grateful for? And I want you to take your pen and write down on your piece of paper your joy, your deepest joy this morning. And then, when you're finished, we're going to crumple them up, and I'll tell you what to do with them then. Crumple them up like a snowball or a spitball. And those of you in the front row, when you're all ready, you're going to throw yours backwards, but everybody else can throw yours forward. And there's folks in the back, that last row, you may want to throw yours backwards so that what I want you to do, essentially, is pick up a piece of paper that's not the same color of yours to make sure that you don't pick up your own joy. Okay? So when I say throw, is everybody ready? Oh! Yeah. Say you throw!
And now we need to get one that's not on us, right?
Okay, now open it up. Oh gosh. Does everybody have one? So now open up your piece of paper and read what you have, what's written there. And now let's just, all of us, choose a couple words from it. If it's a long sentence, don't read it. But let's all just say out loud what is in that note. Say it out loud now. Share my talents. Wonderful. So now, I want you to fold it back up and put it in your pocket. And now you are the keeper of someone else's inspiration for gratitude. And someone is the keeper of yours. See if you can keep this paper to remind you in those times when it's hard to remember your blessings. And know that as you hold theirs, yours are also being held, which is how we together live out the interdependent web of existence. And so now we go from joy to remembering the darkness, or Good Friday.
Remembering the darkness. "I am rather lovely, aren't I?" she asked, giving a casual rustle to her blossoms and a grateful curtsy with her bows. "See how well I have survived the winter?" But then she stopped, for the memory of the hard winter sent through her a stab of anger and pain that she thought the spring had healed. "Where were you when I needed you?" she cried out to the sun, and suddenly her pent-up anguish found release in a flow of fluid that oozed from the cracks in her bark and trickled down the sides of her trunk. "I needed you. I needed you so badly, and you weren't there," she sobbed. "You've been gone so long, and I've been so cold and lonely and scared." The sun's glow only intensified, and the message was repeated. "You have survived the winter because you are very much loved." "Loved?" she hesitated, not wanting to challenge the statement, but needing to be reassured.
So in the story of Jesus, he died on a Friday afternoon. And then there was a Saturday following his death that should have been the worst, or except that somehow perhaps it was not. If for even as much of an instant as we look up to the full brilliance of the sun, we find for hours afterwards, whenever we close our eyes, the outline of the sun is still there, as though the image has been branded on our eyelids. And so it must have been for the disciples, for those who had been present on that Friday on the hill where he was executed. On Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, even with their eyes closed, they could still see the three crosses dark and angular against the sky. Even with their fingers in their ears, they could still hear the sounds that had been made up there. Theologian Frederick Buechner wrote those words. He was reframing the resurrection and the execution of Jesus. Haunted by the failures to save their teacher, the loss of his life and the horrific suffering he endured, the disciples were lost and they were alone. There had been so much hope, so many promises, and suddenly their lives seemed bleak. The world had gone pale and empty and dead. Buechner says that the disciples did what we all do. They went to Emmaus. He writes, "Do you understand when I say that there is not one of us who has not gone to Emmaus with them?" Emmaus can be a trip to the movies, or it can be shopping, or fishing, or reading a novel. Emmaus might be dinner at a friend's house, or even coming to church. Buechner says Emmaus is doing whatever we do and wherever we go to help make ourselves forget that the world holds nothing sacred. Not even the wisest and the bravest and the loveliest survive. They always die. That even the noblest ideas that men have, ideas about justice and freedom and love, have always been twisted out of shape by selfish people for selfish needs. Emmaus is where the disciples went to forget about Jesus and the great failure of his life. In an Easter message on April 8th, sent from the Poland-Ukraine border, Reverend Christian Krieger and Jesuit Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich said, "The events of Holy Week take us to the heart of injustice, violence, and suffering. The story of Jesus' death echoes the human suffering and tragedies experienced in many parts of our world, not least by Ukrainians in their own country, and wherever the roads of exile have taken them." So this morning, we will remember over 6 million people worldwide whose lives have been lost from the pandemic, and also the innocent people who have died in the war in Ukraine and those who continue to live in danger. And let's also remember our own pain, our own losses. Most of the messages that we get from our culture tell us to push away our pain, to deny it or minimize it, to immediately turn it into a life lesson that makes us wiser or stronger. Yet it is important for our physical health and our emotional health and well-being and our spiritual well-being to acknowledge the pain, the loss, the disappointments, the betrayals, and the hurts, to give pain its due, that we might move through it to the other side. So this part of our worship service this morning is honoring your pain. And you will be invited to come and drop a stone into the worship well, the weeping well. It's filled with glycerin, so the stone will fall slowly. And if you, in fact, do not want to get up and you would like us to dedicate you a stone for you, when the line is finished, just raise your hand and Deborah and I will put a stone in for you. So now you are invited to come forward. pausing for a moment of silence as our hearts embrace one another, because there was a lot of pain shared this morning. So now we move into the tree in the meadow, sharing the good news.
"It's true," replied the sun, "that there were days when the clouds seemed to separate us, but I was really there, even when you couldn't see me. And those days when I was visible but remote, when you couldn't feel my warmth, those were the days when I sent a concentration of light. Why, there were even times when I gave you light and snow at the same time, so that my brightness would be reflected up at you as well as shining down. Those were the days when you thought the glare was too strong, the light was too bright. You were seeing more than you wanted to see. Remember?" The tree stood dumbfounded. The sun continued, "The chills and ice and bitter cold have toughened your timber to just the right degree, for you needed to be strong to carry the fruit that will appear on your branches. If I had stayed close all winter, you would not have grown strong. In fact, you could not have become at all what I hoped and dreamed you would be. But now, just look at you." I believed," she whispered, noticing that the words seemed to come from that inner space deep within her. "Yes, you believed," sparkled the sun. "You have always believed, and that is what enabled you to grow. For had you not kept faith with me in the center of your being, you could not have blossomed into you." Weeks passed, and the once lonely tree became a part of life in the meadow. She playfully caught the kites of the children who gathered nearby, and then in a spirit of fair play tossed them back again. "You are a good sport," they said to her. "We will call you friend." A young couple sat beneath the shade of her thickening leaves and spoke of their love for each other. "This is a special place," they said, and they left their initials carved next to her heart. "We shall call you Keeper of Secrets," they said to her. A tired, troubled woman, bent with care, walked silently through the meadow, oblivious to everything except her own worries. She did not even notice the tree. "Come and rest a while," whispered the tree. But she had to toss a piece of fruit onto the path before the woman saw her. Wearily, the woman sat and ate the fruit and pondered deeply. The tree could feel the woman relax as she rested against her trunk. Finally, the woman stood up. "Thank you," she murmured, and embraced the tree. The tree winced, for the woman had touched a spot that had not healed from the winter's ravages, a spot that remained vulnerable though the spring and summer months had been good to her. The woman seemed to notice and caress the spot thoughtfully. At that moment, there was a oneness, a sense of understanding between the troubled woman and the tree. "I will call you Hope," whispered the woman, and touched her again with affection and gratitude. "Have you seen? Have you heard?" she asked eagerly. "I am needed. I am wanted. I am sharing life at a whole new level. And best of all, I am named. Aren't they beautiful names? I am called Friend and Keeper of Secrets and Hope." "Indeed," replied the sun, splashing a smile across the evening sky. "And what is the name I have given you?" "You have named me?" the tree asked, astonished at her lack of awareness. Long before you were a seedling, the sun replied solemnly. What do you call me? She asked. Stay with the question, the sun answered, and listen very carefully, and I will tell you. Watching the sun slide behind the farthest hill, she stood motionless, waiting in the promise of the newly painted sky. What do you call me? She asked again in the stillness of the night. You are called Faithful, said a small voice from within. You are called Faithful, blinked the evening star, as if to reassure her.
So it was on the road to Emmaus that the disciples met the risen Jesus, but they didn't recognize him. They'd been talking about the horrific incident on the hill, the execution of their wonderful teacher, their beloved teacher, and it wasn't until they met a stranger, they invited that stranger to share a meal with them. That's when they recognized him. This is our lesson. We need one another. Their beloved teacher lived in their hearts and minds so vividly that he was in some ways more real than ever before. As John Dominic Crossan said, Emmaus never happened, and Emmaus always happens. We are not asked to believe that Jesus came out of the tomb. We each have a lifetime of memories and experiences that, if we are willing and are taking the time, that can be reframed and translated into a holy narrative. Profound moments that can come and go, but we don't give them our full attention. These are those moments if we focus, and sometimes we need the help of a friend. So the disciples had to make meaning when their teacher was murdered, so they wrote the Gospels. Meaning making is an essential part of being human. It is our task to make meaning, to organize what happened and transform it, and to share what we have learned with others. Use what we have loved and use it to bless the world as a way of celebrating and symbolizing and sharing the good news. So this would be a time, if anybody's eager to come down and blow bubbles, you can come sit in this front row, and Deborah will give you a wand. So, Easter isn't a supernatural miracle. It is a process that we are invited to participate in. Easter is not a noun. We're not talking about a historical event, a thing, a noun. Easter is a verb. It's a verb meaning to awaken after being in the dark, to come alive when you thought it could never happen to you, and to feel the warmth of love in the heart that you thought had cooled forever. Easter as a verb means that you find hope and passion to replace suffering and simply surviving. It is an amazing transformation of spirit that comes with realizing once more what a magnificent and sacred gift that your life is. And just saying thank you, right out loud. Simply thank you for the life we are blessed to share. And as I invite you to say thank you, you are invited to blow bubbles. And then, as I said, you can have bubbles to take home to celebrate on your way home. All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. All right. See, those bubbles wouldn't hurt the carpet, would they? They're so little. Thank you. All right, everyone. So now let us rise in body or spirit and sing joyfully hymn number 345, The Joy We Claim, the Growing Light.
Thank you.
The work of the congregation. Our announcements run as slides at the beginning of the service. If you miss them, just refer to Thursday's weekly e-news, as everything is described there. Our community plate recipient this month is HERS, an organization founded to create visibility for ovarian cancer and a voice for access to care for underserved and marginalized women of color and their families. HERS programs include healthcare navigation, education, patient advocacy, resource development, mentoring, and services as assessed through social determinants. Okay, and now we do the offering. As we celebrate and reflect on the elements of Easter, we continue to do the work of love, of grief, and of returning. We return to love and to connection and the abundance we share. From that abundance, we invite you to share resources with the community, planting seeds for the future that will come to life before us. For the gifts of your time, talent, presence, and financial support, we are grateful. Thank you.
The poet David White wrote a poem for the late John O'Donohue. I don't know if some of you know of him, but he's a wonderful spiritual author and poet, deeply missed. And this is called Easter Blessing, David White. The blessing of the morning light to you, may it find you even in your invisible appearances. May you be seen to have risen from another place you know, and have known in the darkness, and that carries all you need. May you see what is hidden in you as a place of hospitality and shadowed shelter. May the hidden darkness be a gift to give. May you hold that shadow to the light and the silence of that shelter to the word of the light. May you join all of your previous disappearances with this new appearance, this new morning, this being seen, new now and newly alive. May it be so. If you are online following the post feed, you are invited to linger for conversation and virtual connection with the Zoom link provided in this morning's email. And now let us cherish this choir's music. Blessed be.